We're going to get started soon.
Yes.
And Addie's going to be our host.
Yes. Hello, hello. I'm Addie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to show you guys the project while we're waiting. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the project while we're looking at it. All the materials were found at Cal State San Marcos, and then more recently in the past few months, we teamed up with Hill Street Country Club. So we've been making personal projects on top of what we already created. But all the materials then came from our homes during quarantine. Yeah, we just got creative, honestly, during the quarantine and created whatever we could, which we'll see in the video. There's a Bigfoot that was created by Olivia Stevens, which is one of the most playful, I think, creatures we have. And the jellyfish as well that are up above. Yeah, so this is the main part of the installation is the tree. It's about 12 feet tall. The top, actually, we made it so that it can come off, so it's a lot easier to transport because it looks a little scary in the size in person. Here's the Bigfoot, actually, as well. And here are some of the flowers that we made and Randy's little fox. Shanna's bird right there. And actually we had one issue with this project, which made it kind of interesting. So the treetop was actually thrown away. And so this was devastating to us because a lot of people knew about our project and what we were doing. And the fact that it did get thrown away was just personally also just really upsetting. And then we had to go ahead and create a new one. And now we're just doing everything we can to ensure that it never gets thrown away or touched or in the wrong hands again. But it was something that happened that was a hardship, but it turned out to be a positive because in our new space, it looks amazing, the size of it. We can start in just a couple more minutes while we're waiting for people to join in. Honestly, during this one, if any of the artists want to talk about their work while it's being shown, feel free to jump in too. Here's Olivia's bear, made out of plastic trash bags.
Yeah, he had to go under some hardcore reconstruction surgery. Because I know the original gallery, he was, because he's made a trash bag, so it was a little flimsy. So I just, for this, in the bigger gallery space, I really wanted to try to make sure he was a lot sturdier than he was.
And the clouds that are up, we actually created in a couple of days while in the gallery. So part of it, we used the space as like a workshop to just build as much as we could with what we had, which was really cool too. So we didn't really know what it would look like at the end, but we were just making and making with the time and materials that we were given and that we found.
Yeah, it's interesting because we had this this project exhibited at our school, and we had so much less at that point because we moved it to this space, and the space we saw was so much bigger, so we had to make a lot more to really like use the space of the exhibit.
Yeah, and here are some personal projects that were done in the past couple of months.
Daisy already sold some of them.
Oh yeah, I was just going to mention how it's interesting to see how the environment is actually changing as we move from gallery to gallery. And in the sense, it's like a metaphor of like our planet and how we move around with the materials and how we're actually using them. So I don't know, I think it's interesting from like smaller space to bigger space, and then like hopefully more galleries soon.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop my share. So I feel like we're pretty much ready to begin, and people I'm sure will just keep piggybacking in whenever, which is totally cool.
Because you're the host, Addie, you have to, if someone's coming in to the chat, you have to let them in.
Okay.
Unless you want to, I don't know if you're, how the host thing works, but, oh, I can reclaim it while you're talking. Never mind.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Okay, cool. So just to introduce myself again, okay, cool. Leslie's coming in too. My name is Addie Lyon. I'm a Cal State San Marcos art student. I'm in my 3rd year, almost done, and I met all of these lovely students at school. So we're just going to introduce them as well if you guys want to go one at a time.
I'm Olivia. I'm kind of newer to San Marcos, just because I was a transfer student, but I've been part of San Marcos for about a year now, and I really appreciate the environment.
I recently discovered TikTok. I originally thought
I appreciate the environment San Marcos has, because I know definitely where I transferred from, there wasn't that big of, like, there's obviously art classes, but there wasn't like a group of art students, like an art club type thing. So I'm really glad that I found the club at school and was able to join, because it's been a very great experience, as well as just this overall project.
All right, and I already introduced myself, but just say a little bit more. I'm also studying psychology, so I want to do art therapy and like community-based work. So that's why this was so important, and getting to meet Dinah and everyone in the community and the space before as well. Daisy, if you want to go next.
Yeah, so I'm going into my 5th year at CSUSM as an arts and technology major. I mostly do graphic design, so I'm really happy I got to help with the sculptures and actually work traditionally. And I'm thankful for the opportunity of exhibiting here, and Dinah for giving me the opportunity to do workshops, because I eventually want to teach and educate like at a college level, specifically graphic design. So hopefully one day, and thank you. Randy, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Randy Garcia, and I just recently graduated from Cal State San Marcos with a degree in fine arts and a film minor. And I joined with CSUSM Staircase in my first semester there. I was a transfer student, so it was just 2 years for me. But yeah, it was really nice to get to know all these people and work on these projects. I think this one's been in the making for coming up on a year, so it's been a fun project for sure.
Shanna?
Hi,
okay. I'm Shanna. I am a visual arts major, and I have been at CSU San Marcos for about 4 years now. And it's been really cool to connect with so many different artists and just create art with different people.
Leslie?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Leslie Rivera. I just graduated from Cal State San Marcos with a degree in visual and performing arts and a film minor. And I've been in Staircase since the beginning, but what's it called? This is like, you know, like our big project that we've done, and it's been like amazing to get to know everyone. A lot of us are, you know, new, or a lot of us have been here since the beginning, so it's been really fun getting to know everyone and like how like what art everyone makes, and like, you know, how we can collaborate together. So that's been really awesome, and this project has been very amazing, and I just want to give a big thanks to Dinah for, you know, giving us this big opportunity.
Cool. Thanks, you guys, for all introducing yourselves. Next, we're going to talk to the panel members and introduce them. So first is going to be Dr. Jennifer Brandon. If you want to just talk about yourself, and like I said, if you have any slides or anything you want to show us, feel free.
Hi guys, so thanks for having me. So I am not on the artistic side, I'm definitely on the science side. So I come from UC San Diego. I study microplastics and plastic pollution. So what you guys are doing is super cool. I've been working with Addie on this, but I've actually never seen the exhibit till right now. So what you guys have done is awesome. It's really cool. And I'm sure you guys have learned about plastic through this process, but I'm just gonna show you like a teeny like taste of the research that we do, and some a few slides on like plastic pollution in general. And I am happy to host disabled screen sharing. And then I'm happy to take questions on the science of plastic pollution later. But it's, I've been studying plastic for 8 years now, which 8 years ago, like it was kind of a niche thing. And now I feel like everyone is really stoked on plastic in the ocean and fighting it and talking about it, which is really exciting. All right, let me see if this works. Zoom. Sometimes it does not want to work.
Yeah, so do we need to make you a co-host? Is that what we said?
Maybe.
Okay, Dinah, is there any way you can? Because I don't think it's giving me an option. It's just letting me pin you.
Okay.
If you click on screen share, it won't let you enable multiple screen sharers.
Oh, yeah. Okay, it just gave me some options. Okay.
Okay.
The host might need to do that first.
Oh, yeah, now it is. Okay, great. Look at that. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. So let me give you a brief history of plastic. So plastic as we know it is a super new problem. So plastic in any form was invented during the Civil War. It's what we call celluloid. And that's what they made like the first photographs on. And it was actually made out of cotton. So it's what we now would call a bioplastic. This picture of these brushes and mirrors is celluloid too. And it was actually made to imitate ivory because way back in the 1860s, we already knew we were killing too many elephants. And then the first synthetic plastic, meaning it was made out of a fossil fuel, was made in 1907. So it's only been around for like 110 years. But it really wasn't popular. In the 20s and 30s, they started making synthetic plastics out of oil and coal, but they weren't popular. They were just kind of being made in chemistry labs because they could. Then World War II happens, and we need everything for the war effort. So all the metal and tin and rubber and everything is going to the war effort, and they need something to replace everything back home. Enter all this plastic. There's this plastic boom. They build up all these plastic factories. Well, the war ends. What are we supposed to do with all these plastic factories that are built up? They build a targeted advertising campaign to make plastic popular. And they specifically advertise it to housewives in America. So this is an advertisement from a 1955 issue of Life magazine that says, "Throwaway living, disposable items cut down household chores." And look how happy this family is. They're just throwing their dishes and they're throwing their forks and they'll never wash their dishes again. And this is where single-use plastic came from, is this idea that plastic was convenience and plastic was easy. This is 1955. By 1970s, script scientists found plastic in the middle of the ocean. So very quickly, this became a plastic problem. And it wasn't until 1989 that they passed the first legislation banning disposal of plastic at sea. And before 1989, any size vessel, including huge Navy ships and cruise ships, were dumping plastic overboard. And the reason is because we didn't really know how plastic worked, and we didn't know that once it was out there forever, and it never really disintegrated. So plastic today, roughly 311 million tons of plastic are produced annually worldwide. That number is actually probably a little higher, but they never really release like the new numbers till a couple years later. And it's estimated of that 311 million tons, about 8 million tons make it into the ocean every year. And there's estimated to be over 5 trillion pieces floating at the top of the ocean and more floating below that in the water column and in the deep sea. So that's a lot of plastic. How does it get there? It gets there through polluted rivers, polluted beaches, and polluted harbors mainly. That picture on the right of the guy in a backpack is my friend Travis in our local river, the Tijuana River estuary. So the Tijuana River is totally dry in the months of September and October, and you can go clean it, and that's what it looks like. So that's kind of half San Diego trash and half Tijuana trash entering into the ocean. So when that trash makes it out into the ocean, it gets swept into these huge currents, sweeps into the middle of the ocean, and goes into these what we call convergence zones. And those convergence zones of trash are what you've probably heard called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So the ocean has always been sweeping water into the middle of the ocean. Now it's just sweeping trash into the middle too. Once that trash gets there, it interacts with animals, that's their home. And what it does is it entangles them. They ingest it. It takes invasive species from one coast to the other coast. And it also does what we call ghost fishing, where fishing gear is very strong, it's very hardy, and it can still keep fishing animals like this turtle. It can still keep fishing, but we call it ghost fishing because no fisherman is benefiting from it anymore. So how big is this problem? It's a pretty big deal. Every year, over 640,000 tons of ghost fishing gear ends up in the ocean. More than 200 species have been documented to be entangled, and that's just because that's basically all we've studied. There's definitely more than that. More than 136,000 whales and seals are trapped every year, and an estimated 643,000 lobsters die in ghost traps every year, which is not just really bad for the lobsters, it's really bad for fishermen and for the economy. What did I do? There we go. 86% of turtle species, 28% of seals and sea lion species, and 16% of seabird species have been recorded caught. So it's a good chunk of the big animals that live out there. And the most common animals around here in America are cute little fur seals. This cute little guy is a Hawaiian monk seal, and our sea turtles. Sea turtles are kind of bearing the brunt of this problem. Animals don't just get caught in plastic, they eat it too. So a third of barnacles ingest plastic, 9% of fish, these midwater fish, so kind of the fish that live in the middle of the ocean, have been found with plastic in their gut. Up to 52% of turtles, which literally means every other turtle you encounter out in the ocean, has ingested plastic at some point in its life. And some coral even prefer the taste of plastic to their natural food. So they like go out of their way to ingest plastic. What I study is actually none of that. I study the really tiny, tiny stuff. So microplastics actually make up over 90% of the plastic by size. So the really, really small stuff. Over 77% of the plastic I look at is actually microfibers. So it's the stuff that's coming off of our clothes when we wash our clothes. You wash your clothes, these microfibers come off in the washing machine. They end up out in the ocean. And these fibers can be in the thousands per liter of water, which I know, like, we're Americans, we don't know what a liter is, but it's like a third of a gallon. And these tiny fibers can do the same thing. They can entangle and be ingested by tinier animals. So they kind of enter the food web at the bottom, the base of the food web. Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing somehow if my mouse will work. Nope, I'm gonna show you those later. There we go. I hope that was helpful a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the science we do.
Cool, thank you so much for sharing. Next, Janice, if you want to go ahead and start with a little introduction and show anything you want, feel free.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Janice Jones and I am an educator. I'm a teacher on special assignment in Oceanside, and I'm a compulsive beach cleaner. I'm a citizen scientist of sorts, and I'm the co-lead of the Rise Above Plastics Committee for Surfrider San Diego Foundation. And I'm gonna share my screen. It says it's disabled again. That's weird.
Dinah, are you able to make her the host again? It doesn't let me. Hopefully.
Jennifer, you're the host, so you have to switch it over. So you go to Janice and you make her the host.
Okay, cool.
There we go. All right, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is me cleaning up a plastic bag on the beach in Carlsbad. This was actually taken by Eduardo Contreras of the San Diego Union Tribune. I mentioned being a citizen scientist, and a few years ago, I started finding these little biofilters on the beach, and I found them in great quantities. So I went to San Diego Coastkeeper with them, and they helped trace them back to the Hub SeaWorld facility that's in the lagoon there in Carlsbad that no one really knows about, but they raise sea bass, and the county actually did an inspection of their facility and found that they were releasing them, and they were they were going to be charged, I think, $10,000 a day if they didn't stop the release. I still find the biofilters occasionally, but in much fewer quantities than I was finding them at the time that this had taken place. And then this portrait of me was taken by my friend Margaret Boyson, who has a website called Beautiful We. And she surrounded me in blue plastics that I've collected off of North County beaches, and we called it Drowning in Plastic for obvious reasons. I just did a presentation this morning for I Love a Clean San Diego, so some of these slides were for that presentation, but I'm going to share them with you anyway. So in some of the webinars that I've attended through my work, the speakers started with, how are you feeling on a scale of dogs, or how are you feeling on a scale of cats? And these memes have become very popular. So I decided to create one called On the Scale of Plastic, How Are You Feeling Today? So I took similar pieces of plastic, but changed out the eyes or the nose or the mouth to change the expression of each one. And as I said to the I Love a Clean San Diego group this morning today, I'm feeling like a 5 because I was really excited to share with them this morning, and I'm really excited to share with you as well. So to the science piece that Jennifer was talking about, you wouldn't necessarily think that science and art go hand in hand, but they really do. And I've been cleaning the beach and documenting what I found for about the same amount of time that Jennifer's been working. It's been over 7 years now for me. And like she said in the beginning, there wasn't as much awareness about the problem, but it's really grown over time. So these are all items that I've picked up off of North County beaches, and you can see how they are degrading. And when you zoom in and look closely, you can even see some of the animal bites and little piercings are in that milk jug, where I'm speculating that birds had maybe tried poking into it. But all of these things break down into smaller and smaller bits of plastic called microplastics that essentially become just these tiny toxic bits that the animals are ingesting. Only around 9% of all plastic has ever been recycled. I think Jennifer could probably confirm that statistic. And I noticed on her slide, I think her slide said between 7 and 12 million tons. I'm not sure, but 8 million tons seems to be like the average that most people report.
Yeah, it's the average from the same paper. Yeah.
Okay. And then it's estimated by the year 2050 that there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean by weight. And Jennifer mentioned the findings of microplastics in animals, and there was just a report I saw this morning. I didn't read it in detail. I think it's out of Australia, but every marine animal that they tested had ingested plastic. So then the problem then is determining how those plastics are impacting the animals, and then as they move up the food web and we're ingesting them, how will they be impacting our health? So I think it's really important to know these statistics and to think about the impact on the environment and on ourselves. But as an educator, when I'm working with kids especially, I like to approach the problem through the arts and through play. And so, because sometimes I think when we're always so inundated with the scary images and the horrifying data that we see, some people can shut down and kind of separate themselves from it as a way of protecting themselves, really. So with the exhibit that you've done with the reuse project and approaching it through an artful and playful way, it helps people engage. And I love these two quotes, one from Brene Brown: "Art has the power to render sorrow beautiful, make loneliness a shared experience, and transform despair into hope." And that's what we all need in these times, is hope, and art can give us that hope. And then from Benjamin Shepherd, play invites people to stay engaged within subjects that are far more serious than can be dealt with in an earnest fashion. And so I invite kids, and with the workshop I did this morning with I Love a Clean San Diego, I was inviting people to play with the materials, the waste materials that they have. My background, you can see behind me here, is all plastic that I've collected off of North County beaches and have made into different arrangements and pieces of art. And to give you a view of my workspace here, I made a little video. This is actually the tabletop that's to the left of me, and you can't see it in this video, but I have some really large lights that I use for my photography, but I'm just gonna show you around my space. So there you can see all the common household items that people have that end up on our beaches. I organize them into tins, and then I organize them by color. And these are like turkey roaster tins. And this is what I take into the classrooms to have kids make with. More tins of plastic. And then these are the items that are behind me. Those are all lids and sand toys and jars of straws and bottle caps and polystyrene. That's a poster I made out of balloon bits, other things that I've made there. And so this is the stuff that's all surrounding me all the time. And even though when you think about the reality of it, it's sad and scary, but the color and the shapes and the combinations that you can make with it really do inspire me. So when I first started this journey, I was primarily taking photographs of the things that I found and posting them to social media. And I always tried to make the photographs interesting and beautiful, hoping that people would look a little bit closer and try to figure out the story behind what I was photographing. This one's obviously at the Oceanside Pier. Straws wash up in large numbers, even though we do have a straw law on the books in California, but that law doesn't apply to fast food restaurants or self-serve bars. And most of the straws that are washing up aren't from full service sit-down restaurants, I don't think. And then plastic cups. One day I was at the beach, and strewn up and down the strand line were cups. It's really interesting, and I don't know if Jennifer could explain this to me, but I find that things wash up at the same time. And I don't know what causes that, but someone smarter than me could probably explain it. And then this is the biggest piece I've made. It's in front of the Wave Water Park in Vista. I made it for the Vista Public Arts program called Kites Over Vista. And these are all marine plastics that washed up here locally. And it represents what Jennifer was showing us, that convergence. It represents how the tides move in a clockwise motion and kind of swirl the plastics into that area known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And if you look closely at this thing, you can see that's a razor, that's a toothbrush, there's a pair of sunglasses. There are, some of these items are from commercial fishing. I think that's some kind of a top from some kind of a fishing container. But a lot of it, a vast majority of it, are common household items. I did not color these plastics in any way. People ask me that if I've painted them. I haven't painted them. These are exactly how I found them. I should say that people from all over the world did add to this. I put out a call on Instagram for people to contribute. And my sister in Marin County, who's also a beach plastic artist, she provided me some materials. I had things come to me from Camilo Beach in Hawaii, which is one of the most polluted beaches in the world. New York, Australia, England. So this piece represents marine plastic from lots of different places. It's not this colorful anymore. So if you drive by, it doesn't look like this. It's faded over time. And it's been there for 3 years now, I think, or this is going on its 3rd year. And I've worried about the degradation of the plastics in the environment, to be honest with you, that I know that this piece is shedding plastic, microplastics probably, that are entering the environment. So that's the contradiction of having public art like this out in public, but I think it does raise awareness, and it's important to have people see. So all this collecting and cleaning and gathering and sorting, as I said, led me to start working with kids. This picture is of a STEM fest in Vista. Those are all my plastic bins, and the kids are gathering their materials. And then those are 2 plastic people, probably not created at that event, but somewhere along the line, I have tons of examples of student work. And then this is a time-lapse video of me playing around and creating with my bits that you saw on my desktop there. And is it gonna play? Maybe it's not gonna play. Well, while it's deciding what it's going to do, oh, I hadn't hit play, go figure. So this is kind of my process sped up. When I'm trying to make something, I just start putting pieces together, rearranging them, adding things, removing things. And when I'm doing something that's creating a face or a portrait, I'm always thinking about the mood or the emotion that I'm trying to express, like I did in that meme at the beginning with the 9 different heads. You can really be expressive with materials like this. And then I'm just going to play a second of this. This is a video of art created by kids. It's 3 minutes long, so we don't have to watch the whole thing, but just to give you an idea of what they make when given these objects. And sometimes they'll have one color bin to work with, or sometimes they'll have different colors. It depends on the venue and what we're trying to make at the time. Where'd my stop button go? So then as a teacher, I also am passionate about teaching writing. So I try to connect some form of writing to the art that they make, whether it be poetry or letters to the editor or an argument writing piece. This work inspires that writing that then we can put out into public venues. I've had kids make PSAs and different things. So with that, there's a little marine debris heart to say thank you to Dinah, the Hill Street Country Club, and the Reuse Project for inviting me to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your practice and letting everyone see. I guess now we should go ahead and jump into the discussion and jump into questions. I don't know if anyone's able to, if you're the co-host right now. Oh, okay, someone just got in. I knew we had people waiting, so that's exciting. Cool. All right, so we will go ahead and begin our panel discussion. So to start, Olivia, do you want to go ahead and start with your first question? Oh, you're muted, Olivia.
There we go. Hey, Addie.
My bad. For my first
There
question
you
is
all
for-
are.
Go ahead, Olivia.
For my first question,
You're kind of Breaking up there, Olivia.
Okay,
Can everybody mute except for Olivia?
Yeah, let's do that. And then whoever's asking the question. So yeah, Olivia, go ahead and start.
so my first question is for Janice. I was wondering, what was something interesting you learned about working with these materials? Because I know recyclable like plastics and stuff isn't something a lot of people think to use when they're creating art. I was just wondering, what was, if there's anything interesting you've learned from working from it, like what is it good for? What is really difficult with working with it?
One of the difficulties in working with it is if you want to make something permanent, plastics are hard to adhere to one another, and a lot of the glues can be toxic. For that big piece, into the current piece, I actually screwed all the pieces together rather than using any kind of adhesive. But finding the right way to make it permanent is really difficult. For the most part though, I don't make permanent pieces, and all the things that the kids make aren't permanent. The photograph is what's permanent. So we make the piece, we photograph it. I might do some photoshopping to it to remove junk that's in the background. And then that's the work of art that could be printed and framed. And then the materials can all go back in the bins to be reused. One of the most interesting thing I've learned just as a citizen scientist, and every time I find something, I try to do a little bit of research about it, but I've read a lot about the microfiber problem, and that's not commonly known, that our clothes, like Jennifer said, are shedding these plastics. Polyester is a form of plastic, and that's been a challenge for me in thinking about being more sustainable with my clothing purchases. And then finally, I'm going on too long, but these are nurdles. Nurdles are pre-production plastics. They're teeny tiny plastics. You can't even see it, but they're teeny tiny plastics of 5 millimeters or less. And they're used in all the manufacturing of plastic products. These wash up in great numbers on the beaches here in North County. But if you aren't looking for them, you won't even know that they're there.
Right? I feel like they almost look like sand. Like they would just blend in, which is terrible. Yeah.
They do, and they're often like in the rack on the shoreline. And so if you pick up some seaweed or seagrass and look underneath it, there's very often nurdles under it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that answer. That was awesome. So I'm going to be going next, and I have a question for Dr. Brandon. So I read a little bit about a study that you did with microplastics in 2019, finding it in their stomachs in filter feeding marine life animals. So I wanted to ask you how that was for you personally, and anything that you want to share with us from that research.
Yeah, so I was studying one of my favorite marine creatures, actually, which is kind of a rare animal, so you might not have heard of them, but they're called salps, and they're these like beautiful creatures that just float in the ocean. They kind of like float and swim at the surface of the ocean. And I was looking in their stomachs. No one had ever looked if they could eat plastic or not. And I kind of developed this new technique to see if they could eat tiny, tiny plastic. And I looked at them over different years at different parts of the ocean, from like the coast of California to Hawaii, in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I looked at juvenile ones, adult ones. It didn't matter. Every single one I dissected had plastic in their stomach. And it was just like such a shocking moment when I realized, like, as I just like kept cutting them open, I was like, oh my gosh, these animals are 100% affected by microplastics, and they are really at the bottom of the food web. They've been documented in 200 animals' diets. So like this microplastic is getting into the food web through these animals. And they live at the top of the ocean, but then some of them swim to the bottom of the ocean. And so it's really getting through the whole ocean. And And the plastic that's in their stomachs is so small, like it's hard to see without a microscope. And so really you can just kind of like swim past it or walk past it on the beach and not even know it's there, but it's small enough that it's really kind of impacting these animals on the level that it can get into some of their tissues and their organs and really cause some real health problems. So that was really one of the studies that started to make me realize, like, okay, we know this is a problem, but this is a problem on the level of like, how are we ever going to clean this up? This plastic is so tiny that it's like kind of just like an invisible problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That must be really sad that it's your favorite animal.
Yeah.
Not to do that, like, man. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Daisy, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess this can be answered from like a scientist and artist perspective. So why do you believe the documentation of trash and plastics is important? What is the significance you hope it will bring in the future? So I don't know who wants to, Janice or Jennifer?
Yeah, Janice, go.
What that question brought to mind is my sister and her work, because she's actually older than I am, and she's been cleaning the same stretch of beach in Marin County for over 20 years now with her husband, and they've been documenting this issue, and slowly over time awareness has grown, and just in the last couple of years it's exploded, but there's still so much work to do. And I think that the arts can convey the issue in a way that's accessible to people, and then the science is equally as important. Obviously, can't do anything without the science behind it, but the two can really go hand in hand with communicating the problem and documenting it and opening people's eyes to it.
Yeah, for me, I have a very unique kind of privilege to study something that the public cares about. I have a lot of scientific friends who study something like really important, but the public kind of never ask them about it or ask them to do interviews or lectures or those kind of things. But from very early on, I was studying something that people wanted to know about and wanted to hear about. And so I've learned a ton about science communication and have given literally hundreds of lectures on this topic, and actually got to like be a college lecturer on communicating science to the public. And what I've really learned is you have to talk about plastic in like every form. So in art exhibits, in interviews, like in news clips, on social media, like you never know how it's going to connect with someone. And I never would have gotten my PhD if it wasn't actually for a People magazine article. That is the first time I ever heard about plastic, was like a tiny little like 2-paragraph article about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in like 2010. And I was like, what is this? There's no way there's plastic in the middle of the ocean. And so science journalism is important, science communication is important, like museum exhibits are important, art exhibits are important, just spreading the news in like every way. And whatever way it like works the best for you. Like you guys are, a lot of you are fine artists, digital artists, social media has been huge in helping us spread the word. I mean, straw bans, almost every straw ban can tie itself back to one viral YouTube video, which is amazing. So it's been really cool to watch plastic become so popular through like all different kinds of modes of communication.
Cool, thank you so much again. Shanna, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so this is a question that could be both for Dr. Brandon or for Janice. I was wondering, like, how badly do you think the environment is going to be affected due to the sudden influx of waste made by like the plastic gloves and the disposable face masks?
Oh my gosh, should I show you a photo? I've taken photographs of, to document them, of over 800. I think I have 830 photographs of masks and gloves taken in the radius around my home in downtown Vista. So it's been an incredible influx of this new type of waste. And I personally have a reusable mask, and gloves early on were, the CDC put out information that gloves don't actually help. They can actually spread the virus because people aren't as cautious about what they're doing when they're wearing gloves. The real thing you should be doing is hand washing. So I'm going to dig up that photo to share while Jennifer gives her thoughts on that.
Yeah, masks and gloves are going to be really harmful for a couple of reasons. Gloves, just the kind of plastic they are, is because it's so flexible. If animals get entangled in it or ingest it, it'll be really hard for them to like kind of pass it through their system. The elastic on masks, they are already getting entangled in it. But then the thing that actually really worries me even more than the influx is the way people are disposing of masks. Like if you have gone to the grocery store parking lot, you're just like seeing them left in the parking lot or on the sidewalk, because they just like, people think they're so germy that they can't for some reason just throw them in the trash can. And what happens when you leave things in a parking lot or on the sidewalk is they get washed down into the gutters and like the sewer system. So those little holes on the sewer or on the sidewalk that say like, don't dump, drain straight to ocean, they are not lying. Those things drain straight to the ocean. No one filters that water. No one filters that trash. So if a mask goes into that, it goes right out into the Pacific Ocean in San Diego County, and it is not filtered. And so if you put it into a trash can, it will go to a waste center. But if it makes it into one of those storm drains, it is not filtered. It goes straight out into the ocean. And so the disposal of these masks and the rapid influx of the masks is what really concerns me both ways.
And I would find gloves rather, at the beach prior to this. They would wash up with fairly regular frequency. I haven't been going to the beach. I've been staying closer to home during this time, but I imagine when I do go back to the beach, I'm gonna be finding more and more of both. And if I'm able to share my screen again, oh, good, it's still on. Here, this one represents 441 masks and gloves. As I said, I've taken photographs of over 800 now. And then the other thing I've been doing is graphing it. I get obsessive about things. This is just a partial segment of my graph because the graph goes for the past 3 months, but I've documented how many miles I walked, how many gloves, how many masks I found, and the date. And I've noticed an interesting pattern. At first, I was seeing mostly gloves. And then over time, if you were to see the end of this timeline, there are way more masks than there were gloves at the beginning. So it's been kind of an interesting case study. And then the other thing I've done, and I don't have an image of it, is I've been mapping them on Google Maps. So I can see exactly where I found the glove, what day, and you can see the areas where they're most concentrated. And that tends to be in parking lots and the downtown area of Vista. And people ask me, or people think that, well, it was done accidentally, that people just drop them on accident. And I think that's true. I think there's some of that, but I can often tell, at least I think I can tell, that someone took them off and just dropped them in the space next to their car before they got in. And I've also found many left in shopping carts. And the thing that infuriates me is not only are they a hazard to the environment, they're a hazard to the people who work in grocery stores and gas stations and the people who empty our garbage cans throughout the city that have to then put themselves at risk by picking up potential biohazards, really.
Yeah. And did you guys also notice that like her whole picture was basically blue and white, like blue and white and purple? Those are like the colors of natural prey for a lot of animals. So like turtles are eating jellyfish and gelatinous organisms that are blue and white and clear and purple. And so the fact that most of our masks and gloves just like happen to be blue and white and purple and clear, like through no fault of the like industry that they've just picked those colors means that those things are going to be like selectively eaten by turtles and other animals. So it's just like an added issue that if like we happen to wear neon yellow gloves, they'd probably be eaten less, but because they're blue, they're going to be eaten more. So yeah, it's not good. Put them in the trash can. Do not put them on the ground.
Lowe's put trash cans on their shopping cart. They tied buckets onto their shopping cart areas and put signs on them. Please dispose of your masks and gloves in these bins. And I've watched over time, and I don't think it's decreased the amount of masks and gloves that I see when I walk through their parking lot, sadly.
Sadly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to let Leslie ask a question, and then we're going to actually open the floor to our guests if they want to ask any questions to the artist or to our panel members. So Leslie, go ahead and take it away, and then we'll open it to the floor.
Okay, so this is a question to both Dr. Brandon and Janice, or either or, but it's also kind of like a question to get like the viewers thinking about all of this. So my question is, what does "we must be the change we want to see in the world" mean to both of you? Or
that's such a good question. And for me as an educator, I think it's inspiring young people to care about the environment, to care about themselves, so that they can grow up to be that change that you are being right now. Yeah, we need to instill those values into our young people at a very young age so that we can have a better community, a better world for everyone.
Yeah, for me, I think what it means, I mean, I work on something that I'm really passionate about, making the ocean a cleaner place, but there are days where I am working really long hours in the lab and I will like run in somewhere and get like pre-made food that's wrapped in a lot of plastic because I'm exhausted. And then I'm like, wait, if this is like, I have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so there was kind of a point a couple of years ago where I was like, wait, you can't like say one thing all day and research this all day and then not really change your own habits too, just because you're like a really, really busy scientist. So I both realized that I need to do that, but then also it's made me realize like I can't just tell like busy working moms like, hey, you have to go zero waste, knowing like that's impossible to them. So realize there's kind of like a grace that has to go with my message in helping like everyone get there together, because it's a very hard thing to do.
And to that, I want to add on that the other thing that I do is a lot of advocacy work with our local governments all across the 78, Carlsbad, Oceanside, Vista, San Marcos, and Escondido. We've been pushing really hard for policy regarding single-use plastics. And I think we also need to lobby at the state and federal level. And there is some legislation that's hopefully will be coming into play, because manufacturers need to be held to account. We need a circular system so that people have those options and that they don't have to make those hard choices.
Great, yeah.
Thank you.
I just realized also, Randy, did you want to get a question in really quick? You're on mute, by the way, though.
Yeah, sure. I'll go with a question that originally I had aimed for Janice, but I think Dr. Brandon could also probably contribute to. And that is, you've experienced firsthand the education of the youth and have surely seen the strictness surrounding the demands of standardized education and how little room is really allowed for change. So what would be your first suggested step for incorporating environmental education more regularly in our K through 12 classrooms?
Environmental standards are addressed in the National Science Standards, the NGSS. So it is supposed to be being taught. I'm actually on a committee right now called Climate Champions, and it's through UCSD. And it's a group of 10 educators across the county that are going to be working on curriculum. They'll be rolled out primarily to middle schools and high schools to begin with, and then we'll work their way down to elementary school. But I really believe in a cross-curricular approach, and the work that I've done with students, I think I already mentioned, I integrate writing, we integrate the science behind the problem, and I think that you can address all the standards and have kids test better when they're given that kind of well-rounded education, that they can mentally integrate all those concepts, and then they'll be better writers, they'll be better thinkers, they will be more reflective, they'll ultimately be better citizens, and I think that improves test scores.
Yeah, I actually have a similar answer. NGSS, which are the new science standards, when they're really implemented well, has this vision of all the sciences together, which is really what science is actually like. Like, I am a biologist, but I do chemistry, and I have to understand physics and really understand actually a lot of public health and things like that. Like, plastic covers all those things together. And that is not the way I learned science in school. I very much learned like sophomore year is chemistry and junior year is biology and senior year is physics, and you did not cross over. And that's not the way the world works. And so what I really want is that kids see like real world problems, and how solving real world problems requires that interdisciplinary approach. And solving climate change and pollution and overfishing and all those things requires a really interdisciplinary real world approach. So I think they're getting there in some of the new curriculum and some of the new things they're teaching, but getting kids out of the classroom to meet real scientists and some of that stuff really helps too, or having real scientists come to you and talk about the fact that I need to understand all those things and know how to talk to policymakers and all those things to make any change happen, I think is important.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you so much. Now I guess we'll just open it to the floor to anyone who's watching. If you have any questions for the panel members or for any of us artists, we would be happy to answer. Yeah, Autumn, go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Autumn. I've got a question that I suppose would be for anyone that has thoughts on it. I feel really intrigued by ways that we can reuse and upcycle plastics for useful purposes. So for example, I'm passionate about natural building, using earthen materials such as clay, sand, and straw to create healthy homes and sustainable structures. And an idea that came through recently was like, what if we could compact plastic material into like eco bricks as a sustainable form of actually making use of these plastics. So I'm curious if anyone has thoughts or ideas on other ways that we can make use of these existing resources.
Yeah, so eco bricks have been kind of starting to be championed in some basically in some island nations where they like don't have recycling facilities at all. And what's really cool about them is it takes a lot less energy than like the true recycling process. So the true recycling process, you have to fully melt the plastic and remelt it into something else. But with eco bricks, you're basically just getting a pressure and you're just kind of compacting it. So that's a really cool thing that people are working on. Another cool thing people are doing is recycling clothes into insulation. So the insulation you have in your house right now is made out of like some kind of toxic, weird materials. But clothes, which are recycled at an even smaller percentage than plastic, it's like something like 3% of clothing and fabric is recycled. You can actually make into insulation. And there's some major clothing retailers that will basically take your like torn jeans and turn them into insulation. So there's some cool things people are doing in the construction space, which construction is one of our biggest areas of waste. So yeah, it's some it's an area that I think we'll see like a lot of innovation over the next couple of years.
I wanted to add that with the I Love a Clean San Diego Zero Waste Fair, the speaker before me is named Shali. I'm not sure. She's from San Diego, University of San Diego, and she has an organization called Waste for Life. And they, are you familiar with it, Jennifer?
Mm-mm.
She works in third world countries to develop a community building. They build structures actually out of plastics, and then they also build, they also make things like notebooks, which they sell and actually becomes a moneymaker for them, so they can sustain themselves using the plastics to make things, to build structures. And she's here at the University of San Diego, is now working at the border, the riverbed where there's so many plastics, and working with that community to try to start integrating these ideas here in the San Diego, Tijuana area. I have a question for Jennifer though, with the eco bricks and those other products that you build with, it makes me worry about any kind of off-gassing or degradation of those materials over time that could be harmful. Are there impacts down the road with those?
Yeah, so with the eco bricks, there is concern because in like tropical countries, obviously the sun is beating down on these walls. And so there's concern that the chemicals in the plastic could like leach out. And so I don't think they've really been around long enough that anyone's done any like human health studies on it, but that's definitely a concern about it. And then, yeah, what you said, Janice, about your art exhibit and anything we kind of make out of plastic is, as it weathers, microplastics do come off of it, just from being in the sun and being out in the wind. And so that's kind of a double-edged sword with plastic, is we've made way too much of it. We have to upcycle it and recycle it. But in that process, it's going to degrade, and we're going to make microplastics and nanoplastics out of it. And so trying to figure out how we do that well is complicated. So like UC San Diego just repaved a huge road in the middle of campus with like kind of half asphalt, half plastic, which seems great, but that plastic, as cars drive over it, that plastic will probably degrade and fade off of it. Like, you know, any road, asphalt comes off of it. That's why you have to repave roads. Well, this will have plastic in it. And so that plastic will become microplastic, and UC San Diego is very near the ocean. So it will come off into the ocean. But there's a similar company that's putting plastic into concrete, and putting it into concrete is great because you build concrete into the foundation of a building, and that's there for like 30, 40 years, and it's not really going to degrade. So it's like thinking about where it's a good idea and where it isn't. Like, I'm not a huge fan of clothing made out of recycled plastic, because then you just wash it and then you're just washing plastic down the drain again. But shoes made out of recycled plastic, like those Rothy shoes or things like that, I don't really wash my shoes very often, so it's not as big of a problem. Or so it's like deciding which items are smart to make out of recycled plastic versus not. It's like, it's all just a pro-con game.
Janice, I actually wanted to ask you if there are any environmental artists that inspire you in your work.
Well, yes, my sister and her husband, Judith and Richard Selby Lang, like I said, they've been doing this work with plastics for over 20 years, and they've actually had some international recognition for their work. And she's really the one, when I first started cleaning the beach, or when she first started telling me about what she was doing, let me go back to that point. I wasn't seeing the plastics on our beaches here in North County. And she would tell me about the problem where she lives in Marin, and I would kind of be doubting her because I wasn't seeing it here. And over the course of these last 20 years, it's grown and grown and grown. And then I gathered enough materials to start doing the work myself. But they're innovators in this work and have really inspired me. There are tons of others that are doing really incredible work, from folk artists to artists at the highest level of the work. But she and her husband are really my inspiration. There's actually, I'll put it in the chat, there's a short documentary made about them that's really interesting and engaging, and I would encourage people to watch that.
Nice, yeah, definitely send it in, that'd be lovely. And anybody else, if you want to jump in with questions, now would be a great time.
I have a question, Addie, and this is for Jennifer. We're talking about microplastics getting into these organisms and really having very deleterious, damaging effects. Has there been any studies on these organisms, ones that have actually adapted in a positive way with the presence of plastic? Because it seems like through mutation, through however that might happen. But have there been any kind of studies like that?
There's only been one. So there's only one animal that seems to be doing well because of plastic. And there's only one insect in the whole ocean. And it is called a sea skimmer. So like pond skimmers, like those insects that live on the surface.
Yeah.
So there's one that lives way out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it lives on the surface, but its eggs sink, which is like not a great evolutionary trait. When you lay your eggs and they sink. And so it has to lay its eggs on seaweed or driftwood or things like that. Now that there's all this floating plastic, it has all these things to lay its eggs on. And so it has had a population boom, which is great for it, but it's right in the middle of the food chain. And so normally when you disrupt something in the middle of the food chain, it kind of like messes with the rest of the food chain. We're not really sure what's going to happen, whether it's going to make a decrease in the plankton below it, or whether it's going to be like really good for the seabirds above it. It's also laying its eggs on toxic plastic. And so whether it's going to have like mutated larvae or things like that, but no one's gone back and studied it since we first started to see this like huge population boom in insects. But that's the only animal that has so far been proven plastic's benefiting it.
Yeah. Okay. One last question. This is for staircase and the reuse for you all. This is more of an aesthetic question, but having worked with plastic, I guess it's open to speakers as well. Is plastic as an aesthetic or kind of non-aesthetic material? How do you work with that? Because obviously your message is forefronted, but it's by this less than desirable material. So how do you all work with that? Because if you apply kind of traditional aesthetics of beauty and this is beautiful, do you hit it head on, or is that a concern of yours?
And stuff like for the face and making it actually look realistic, we thought about actually painting the bottles green, or spray painting using spray paint or acrylic paint. But then we thought, well, what would happen if we want to recycle the material afterwards? Like, we're not gonna be able to reuse it or use it for anything else. So we decided to use the products that we gathered naturally and make an aesthetic out of it and not actually ruin the material, I guess, even though.
Sure. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
ahead, Randy. Did you want to
Yeah,
go?
I wanted to add to that and just say that I think, especially with this project, working with that amount of plastic, going through the process of cleaning it and everything, I would say that there was probably maybe like 80% of this was thinking about the work structurally, because we were working, obviously with these three-dimensional objects is different from a lot of us. Our background is in drawing or painting, things like that. So I would say the majority of the work was structurally, and the aesthetics, we just kind of came together as a group and decided, what looked good where. But the majority of it was structurally figuring things out.
Yeah, I feel like just to add in one more thing, just like how Janice was saying, kind of like it creates a beautiful collective, but as one, kind of like how Professor Allard was saying too, like one single water bottle can be considered like ugly, or you just want to recycle it, throw it away. But then once you put a ton of water bottles together, it can create like a blossom, it can create a flower, or it can create something totally different. So I think we ran with that, was with like creating something that we didn't know we could make with a collection of these different weird items that could be considered gross and trash, but somehow we just created something new.
Yeah.
And for me, with, for example, into the current sculpture that I shared earlier, when you stand back and you look at it, I think it's beautiful just in its shape and its color. And that's what I hope will draw people in to look more closely, and then to recognize items that they might have used or had in their home and think about, could that be my toothbrush, or could that be my razor that's up there? Because ultimately we trust that when we put things in the bin, it's going to go to recycling, or it's going to go to the where it's supposed to end up. But one expression that a lot of people say is there is no away, because these plastics never really go away.
Definitely. Are there any other questions before we wrap this up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question directed for Janice. And that was in your recent article on beautifulwe.com, you expressed a moment where you were feeling doubts when considering the enormity of the plastic issue. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and ask, like, what would you say to others who might also be feeling those doubts about like their possible contribution to the issue?
Well, and where those feelings come from is sometimes when I've gone to the beach, and this is local, I'm here in North County doing this, and I'll have so much trash that I've collected in my bags that I struggle to get back up the cliff to my car, and it can feel very depressing, actually. But what gives me hope is knowing that there are people like Jennifer and Addie and Dinah who are bringing this to the attention of people everywhere, and all you students who are engaging in this work. That gives me hope, and I really think that that we're making progress towards solutions, and the ultimate solution is to prevent it. It's not for me to have to go and clean it up. It should never be there in the first place. So we need, and this is far beyond my scope, but we need leaders at every level to be creating solutions to stop it from entering the environment in the first place. And you young people, I have full confidence, you give me full hope that we're gonna tackle these issues. And even on the days that I'm feeling the most despair and the most frustrated and the most angry, I think about all the good work that's happening, and I have hope for the future for sure.
So much. That was a great answer. And I agree too, it can be heavy and weighing on you, especially working with the products that we found too, just on campus. So we knew that these were all from us. There was no like messing around, beating around, like, no, this is us straight up. And it was every day, but yeah, but all we can do is work together to do better and try and personally make changes and have conversations like this. I feel like that's the most important, is talking and listening and just absorbing as much as you can. And
leading by example. So you probably now you're aware of the issue, and hopefully we'll be using reusable water bottles, and I don't ever hit anybody over the head with my reusable water bottle, or I don't you know, go out on the beach and angrily show people I'm picking up trash, but by leading by example, I think it changes minds too. And people see me cleaning up and they say thank you. And I hope that that sparks something in them that they will want to do the same.
Right, just doing it with positive intentions, just wanting to help. Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you to the panel members for being a part of this. I wanted to tell you guys also about our next discussions, which are going to be on August 29th and September 12th at the same time. And there's going to be different topics and different panel members, so I'll be definitely sending out emails, and we'll be making posts about it so everyone knows. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and making this happen, because without you guys, you know, this wouldn't happen. So it just means a lot to us, definitely.
Thanks for having us. This was really fun.
Absolutely. I'm happy you enjoyed it.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to follow us at the Hill Street Country Club on Instagram and Facebook. We have a website, so you can check out our website, which is thehillstreetcountryclub.org, where you can join our mailing list. And if you want to participate in a workshop, or you have a workshop idea, we're down to collaborate. We're here to expand this message so we can get some solutions in our community. There's a lot of things that are happening locally with SANDAG and community choice energy that we can all figure out how to participate and show up. So hopefully you guys will make it to the next discussion, because a lot more of that will be discussed in details. And I just want to say thank you for giving us your Saturday.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.